Welcome to the Whole Career Podcast, where we explore the world of healthcare careers with Advent Health professionals. We're your hosts, Brandon Strong and Sky Kellogg, and we're excited to take you on a journey of career exploration, development, and success.
At Advent Health, we believe in caring for the whole person, which includes supporting our team members' professional growth and development. In this podcast, we'll be highlighting valuable career information, resources, and advice to help you succeed in both your professional and personal life.
Each episode will feature conversations with Advent Health professionals who will share their personal career journeys, insights, and perspectives on various healthcare careers. From nursing to technology to leadership, we'll cover a wide range of topics to help you stay informed and inspired.
Whether you're just starting out in your healthcare career or you're a seasoned professional looking to take the next step, this podcast is for you. We hope to empower you with the knowledge and tools you need to grow, succeed, and make a positive impact in your field.
At Advent Health, we believe that we are greater as a whole, and we invite you to join us on this journey. So sit back, relax, and let's explore the world of healthcare careers together. Welcome back to the Whole Career Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Strong, and I'm joined by my wonderful co host, Sky Kellogg. And so today we have an extremely amazing episode here for you. We have Nick Borey with us, and he is the manager of Learning Experience Design. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I really am.
Awesome, awesome. So before we get started, just to kind of give our audience some background, can you tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing with Advent Health?
Sure, absolutely. As you mentioned, I'm the manager of learning experience design. I work for the corporate organizational learning and development team, which that means I not only get to support a team that designs and develops amazing learning, I also get to influence and standardize and dotted line and touch all the learning in all the siloed and separate teams throughout the organization. So it's amazing.
Love it, love it. And as the audience knows, we'll jump back and forth
Sure.
here, right, as far as timeline, but we just want to give them a great experience. So to start off, can you share a bit about your journey into online learning design and technology, and what first attracted you to this field?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a loaded question. We
Yeah.
might take the whole time on that, but I've always been I'm a huge techie. I'm a training nerd. I'm a creative. I've always lived in that space. So I think just like you've taken your mandatory online learning at any organization, I was always the guy that would look at that and be like, oh, I can do that better. And,
Oh,
oh,
really?
I can do that better. So it's that kind of always drew me to this space. But it wasn't until I got into the space that I realized you don't know what you don't know, and
Mm.
there's just so much more to it. But yeah, that was definitely like original a draw to that space.
Right, right. So this was a guy that all the managers were kind of like weary of. They're like, oh man, we know Nick is going to give us some feedback.
Right.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and Nick, you mentioned that a defining moment in your career was leaving the medical simulation and training team to join the learning technologies team. So, can you walk us through that decision and how it impacted your career?
Absolutely. That was a pivotal moment in my career, and that was back in CFD. And I think that's just a testament to the amazing leadership at Advent Health and how much they develop and support and understand the talents of their team.
Mhm.
So when I was with the medical simulation training team, and that team had absorbed, which was then the e-learning team, and became the learning technologies team, my then executive director came to me and said, "Nick, you have to join that team. You have to. We have a spot. We have to join that team." And when I had the opportunity to go to it, and I was of course all on board, and I met my then director Amber Larson, and of course came in once again gunslinging. Oh, I have so many ideas. We're going to do so many amazing things. She's the one who literally stopped me right there and said, "Okay, well, this is about effective learning, evidence-based best practices, doing all the right things," and that kind of was a check for me. So that was not only a defining moment in my career to move into online learning, it was a major defining moment in my career of really becoming a true online instructional designer and developer for effective evidence-based learning, and for my own personal growth of understanding I did not know anything, and I had a whole lot to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, how hard was that to have someone come to you and say, hold on, when you were ready to go and someone slowed you down? Like, how did you overcome that?
Well, if you know anything about the disc profile, I'm a high D, so
Okay.
it's like but it's exactly what I need, and it's what I try to portray as a leader as well, is to give that honest feedback of like, this is amazing and you're going to do great things with this, but this is what you really need to know. And I took it and ran with it. I grabbed every book I could get. I watched every podcast, every YouTube video, subscribed to all the groups. I went and got my master's degree in education and learning technology, my project management PMP certification.
Oh wow.
There was no holding me back when somebody says, well, like you need to do this, and that's what I'm going to do. So it just motivated me huge.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing from what I'm hearing, and especially because our audience is really entry level people looking,
Sure.
or people looking to pivot. And so I love that you mentioned that you really jumped in and got the different certifications and sought out that different learning, because you want to, of course, you want to learn by fire, but you also want to be prepared as well. And so it sounds like you kind of did a bit of both, which is great. So do you mind sharing, and this is just us going back a little bit so that the audience understands. So you mentioned development,
hmm
and I don't know, maybe their mind goes to, well, is he doing any coding? So talk to us a little bit
Sure.
about what that experience, or what that maybe content creation for the online learning that you guys are doing, what that looks like on your team specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, I gotta, I'm gonna probably geek out with you guys a
It's
bit
okay.
because
let's
I like
let's
you
do it.
start getting me talking about this.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna dive in. So there's a lot of different ways to design and develop online learning, and there's a lot of different modalities. The primary way is course authoring software. Articulate 360 is the primary in the world course authoring software. It's a when you talk about and speaking specifically to the technology of it.
Right.
If I could describe it, I would say maybe it's a mixture of video editing and PowerPoint
Okay.
software with some animation mixed in. So, and a little bit of coding, a lot of technology logic using triggers and variables. So the tech geek in you will there's no limit to the possibilities of what you can do when you design something in specific software. But then there's other modalities as well. I This podcast is a version of online learning, and it's a could be a video, it could be a quick reference guide. There's all kinds of different modalities, but for my team specifically, we primarily use course authoring software like Articulate.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
hmm
So, what personal and professional skills have been most valuable to you throughout your 7 years in learning design?
I would say from personal and professional is going to be definitely adaptability, communication, project management, patience are all key skills that I think come along the way. Um, it's a lot. It's a big challenge to work with subject matter experts who this isn't their world, and they have a very specific idea in their head what they want, and being able to communicate the best practices and the evidence-based best practice ways of getting their vision and their learning objectives and their learning problems solved, and then to be able to do that in the path of least resistance. It's not about necessarily building the most interactive web-based training for every learning problem. Some yes, some no. So, and the ability to pivot, and a lot of in online learning, just like every other department, sometimes timelines are very short, priorities shift. Being able to pivot and leave is a very important skill to have.
And what's the, if you can take us into your team's world
That's a
without,
dangerous world.
right. So what is the decision making process like, right? You're probably a team of a bunch of creatives, right? And so what does that look like, deciding, hey, we're going to put this out? And with a company as big as Advent Health, there
Right.
has to be some standardization of, like, we understand that people are going to learn differently,
hmm
but we just have to put this out because we think that this particular piece of content, or learning, online learning, is the best one. Take us through that decision making process. I'm sure not everyone agrees in those meetings.
Well, you'd be surprised that there usually is alignment because there's a very it's a very formalized process of a consultation and discussion. And you made a great point. Everybody doesn't learn the same way. Everybody doesn't have the same access to technology tools. So that all goes into the decision making of the specific project or learning initiative. So that's why everybody loves their required corporate training that you have to take, right?
Right.
We love it. That's approached in a different way because that has to be scaled to 100,000 plus team members. So not every team member is maybe going to have the best grasp of the English language or the be sitting in front of a laptop. There a lot of them are going to be on their mobile devices. You have to take all of those things into account depending on the audience of your training. So if I'm designing a learning just specifically for your team, Brandon, and you say, hey, I want to teach my team how the logistics of this podcast, and I want them to have to be able to really all kinds of interactive stuff. Well, that's great. You have a small team and it's going to be something that we can design because we know everybody who takes it going to be really engaged. It's something they're going to be interested in, something that they want to learn. They're going to be in front of a laptop. They're all have a fairly mid to high technology comfortable ratio. Those are the audience analysis is really important. It's a whole part of the initial design process when you're working in it.
So, just to give some background to our audience, could you share what teams or departments that you're creating this learning for?
Sure. So nobody is off the board. We've created learning for probably every team at some point who has needed learning in Advent Health. Now, our small organizational learning and development design team primarily focuses on learning that has an organization-wide audience. So it could be for a team per se. So say it's security, but it needs to be applicable to all security at every region, every facility. It's not going to be like an Advent Health Orlando learning for just their security team. So that would be handled at more of a regional or facility level. But yeah, we will support every team for a variety of learning.
Awesome. And one of your significant achievements has been developing online learning standards across Advent Health. So, what inspired this initiative, and what impact have you seen so far on our team members?
Absolutely. So that's definitely, and it's an ongoing effort and very much a living and breathing project as we go. That initially was inspired just by the fact of trying to ensure equity and a bare minimum standard of any content that's inside ALN, inside our LMS. So I'm not speaking to the instructional design and development teams throughout Advent Health because we hold ourselves to a higher standard. They are mostly, masters prepared instructional designer developers. The minimum standards are really speaking to the nurse educator on the third floor of Shawnee Mission who maybe is creating a learning for her team that is going to go into ALN. And we just want to make sure that those educators who maybe don't know best practices of web-based training, maybe aren't as familiar with Advent Health brand standards when designing something, have those bare minimum standards to say, yes, this is acceptable to put into ALN and is going to meet your learning objectives.
Mhm.
And then beyond that, we have all of our best practices, evidence-based design standards for the more advanced courses that we do.
So, Nick, just want to make sure that I'm downloading all of this information properly. So, you created the standard for what a piece of learning content should look like, or online learning should look like, and I think that's wonderful because you don't have to receive these requests from people. You're pretty much empowering them to create themselves, but then at the end of creating that, do they have to check back in with your team to make sure that it's set to be inputted into our ALN, or is this something that is totally autonomous to where they just upload that onto the ALN?
So that's an interesting question, and I wish I had a very straight answer,
It's
but
okay. It's
the
okay.
question is it depends.
Okay.
Just like most answers. So yes, anybody at this point, anyone can create their own learning. But there are standards to that, and there are some that do it quite often, and they have their own established teams. Some don't have an established team, but they create things quite a bit, so that they're just more familiar with the process. If you're brand new to the process, we're going to very much hold your hand through that whole process, talk you through, and yes, we're going to very much look at everything you're doing, provide feedback, and that's the exciting thing about my role and my position in corporate organizational learning development is because I get to dotted line to all these different regions, facilities, all these places that create learning. And there was a time not even that long ago, maybe 3, 4 years ago, where if a region or facility wanted to have and needed to have instructional designers on their team, they really needed to build a team. They need to get a manager, they need to get an instructional designer because how's a nurse educator going to know how to lead and really fully support an instructional designer? They're going to be like, well, I need a manager. And so that's a huge ask when it comes to resources and time But we are in such an exciting time and place, not only in this organization, but just online learning in general, that teams and facilities and regions can actually get themselves an instructional designer. And our team, as the COE learning design team, can provide direct support to them when it comes to best practices, software, templates, mentorship, all that type of stuff. So that individual contributor can still be on those teams and have that support that we're able to provide.
Awesome. Awesome. So, speaking of innovation and learning, how does Advent Health support innovation within the learning technologies team, and what role does the innovation play in designing more engaging and accessible learning experiences?
Yeah, I think that Advent Health is one of our biggest champions of innovative learning. They are geeks, and when I say that, I just mean as an
Of course.
organization. We are a organization full of just excited nerds that just love this and really want the best for our team members. I think a lot of this comes back to our learning framework air that we have, where we say, learning is active, learning is integrated, learning is reflective. It's the backbone of everything we're creating right now, and we're if you haven't heard of it yet.
I have. This
Yep,
is my
yep.
first
Okay,
time.
well, you get ready.
I'm
You're
like
going to be.
logging it into my brain right now. Yeah.
So the thing is that everything that we're designing as we're innovating with online learning is kind of surrounded in this framework. So if you think of online learning now, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Uh, the safety training.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to
Right.
be
I was
like,
gonna
oh,
say,
here
come
comes
on.
the
Yeah. Or
here
the
comes my
fishing training.
Oh
correct.
yeah.
Here's my mandatory train. So when what that actually means when we're talking about innovating in this framework of learning is online learning and innovation. It's not just AI, which I can talk to you about for a while, and all the exciting things and scary things that come along with that. But it's really about meeting team members in the flow of work. Learning needs to is active. You think about like your YouTube libraries. If you need to fix something in your house, you're not sitting down and taking a 30-minute web-based training. You're going to YouTube. You're too impatient to even watch the little intro where the guy asks you to
Right.
subscribe,
Right.
right?
We
Yeah,
can
yeah. It's like
just
just get to the point.
let's just yeah speed
Tell me
that
how to
up.
hammer this thing in right.
Yep.
So that's kind of where we're at. We want to meet our team members in the flow of work. We want to have great learning available at any point and integrated, meaning we want to connect team members in these communities in these various areas where team members are actually able to share their knowledge as well and insights. And I kind of talked about this podcast earlier being a great example of online learning. And I also think this podcast is an amazing example of our AIR framework. If you think about it, uh, uh, as a team member, if I'm maybe getting a little burnt out in my job. I'm just feel like there's better ways I can maybe serve our mission and maybe try something new. I don't have to like go. So I can just look at, and your podcast is ready and available with a variety of different uh, team members who have different jobs that I can watch your podcast. And it's integrated. It's literally another team member sharing their experiences and educating other team members, and in a way it's even reflective. It's reflective on me. Just you asking me these questions is making me reflect on my practice and what I do. And now um, my poor direct reports are going to have to deal with that later today when I come back. We're like, guys, we're not being innovative enough. So
Right.
it's super exciting, and I think that that's where Advent Health leans in, and also with various teams. We have teams like Tim Putt's team in corporate,
Oh
who's
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he's just does amazing things, and really looking at AI and bots to touch our team members in very various ways that are throughout their day that don't impact them or take them offline, but really educate them when they need it most.
Yeah. Wow. The way he described,
I
the
know.
purpose of this podcast was beautiful.
It was.
Do we have any openings? Because
Yeah.
you're hired. Yeah, absolutely. No, but thank you for sharing that. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
And obviously you're talking about just dealing with so many elements. There's so many aspects that go into your role. So what are the challenges that come along with that, and how do you face those and work through them?
Well, you're right. There's a ton of challenges, and as much
Yeah.
fun and it is, there's a lot of challenges, and I think some of them are, when you're passionate about what you do, and sometimes having to compromise for a variety of reasons, and you sometimes have to take yourself out of the question, your creative ego, your best practice brain, and really ask yourself, is this solving the problem, and are we effectively winning, or are we accomplishing the goal set out that
Right.
we set out to do? And sometimes that's a challenge, and because you feel in the back of your head, or that maybe it could have been better, or you could have approached it a different way. But you have to really think about things like that. And I think a big example of that for me personally was COVID. As when you think of online learning design, and people don't think of that as somebody like being a real big impact on by COVID, and obviously in no stretch of the imagination were we clinical and those heroes that were out there working during COVID. However, during that time, our team, I've never been more busy in my life than during COVID. When you have to think about, and not only myself, but every other online learning designer, probably in every organization, when you're having to take every single in-person training event,
Oh,
which at that time, online learning wasn't even nearly as big as it is now. And every single new hire orientation, every single hands-on training, everything immediately has to be put online because we can't get people in rooms anymore.
right,
And even if we can get people in rooms, there can only be 5 people when there needs to be 50.
right.
So having to immediately do that on in such a fast pace, I mean, there was a lot of compromise there, and but it was also shed a lot of light on online learning, and it realized people click. So we didn't go back to all those in-person trainings. People realized like, oh my goodness, I can scale my trainings now online, which had for 20 years had always been in person. So there was a lot of benefits to it, but it was a challenge because we were, I hate to use the term flipping PowerPoints and things like that, but sometimes you felt like that during peak times when you were just trying to get the job done to ensure that our team members had what they needed to get to work.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So, can you share a project or learning experience design that you're particularly proud of and what impact it had on Advent Health's team members? Listen, this is not the time to be humble.
Yeah.
We really want you, don't be
Yeah.
modest here.
All
We
right.
want to
No,
know.
no. It's funny. That is that's like, tell me who your favorite child is. I mean,
Right, right,
no, well, I mean, no, I can't use that comparison because there's some where I'm like, no,
right,
no,
right.
no. But some that are really exciting, and there's some that are, and I'm nervous to even say sometimes like my projects. I've worked on so many projects, but so many of them are team efforts, and so you would hate to even say like this is my project,
Right.
but I will say probably one, and it kind of goes back to what I just mentioned about COVID, was uh, trying to, that was in a sense, it created so many exciting project because you had to rethink things the way that you never really thought about them before. So one project that I was a part of, it was this simulation, an in-person simulation program called Chemotherapy Blitz, where team members, they would go once a year and the nurses would go through 4 like immersive simulations, and each one had a pre-brief. They would do the simulation, they would have their debrief, and during COVID, they couldn't do that anymore. So we had to get together and decide how is that going to be still be able to put on. So we came to the conclusion of we were going to film the simulations, and we were going to create an online training course that kind of simulated that, where they would still be able to get their debrief. They'd have to watch the simulation, and then they would get their debrief questions. So I'm probably most proud of that because of the way that we were able to do that during the pandemic, but also the geek in me is really proud of that because I got to really flex a lot more course authoring skills. It kind of pushed me to do different things. I'm not going to go in the weeds of it, but being able to have like separate uh, branches and tracks of where you would go in, you would click the door, you knock on the door, you go down the one, and you'd have a whole separate path, like its own standalone course almost for each simulation. So I was really proud that we were able to get that done, and and what also makes it heartwarming in a way is to get such amazing feedback from the teams, not only from the SMEs, because the subject matter experts, because they're usually very kind and they're very impressed with the things that we do because we're making their vision come alive. But when you get the feedback and the analytics and the from the actual learners and how much they enjoy it and preferred it
Right.
to some of the in-person stuff, it was just really humbling and it was exciting. So it's definitely one of my favorites that I've
Nice.
worked on.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Nick, we saw that you recently shared on LinkedIn about the launch of the Coalition of Instructional Design and
Yes.
Development. So, can you please share why that group was assembled and what you hope to accomplish with that?
Absolutely. That was a long time coming, and we've been talking about this for a while. My old colleagues in CFD, my current team, there's so many silos of instructional designers, kind of speaking to that point I mentioned earlier about how, you can have an individual contributor and somebody might hire a designer, but they're out there in a silo and they don't have it. They feel like they don't have any family. And this was the opportunity to align and elevate all of our teams. And when I talk about geeking out, like that is full nerding out, is
Right.
getting all of us into a room. And not only does it really level set and help with the whole standards and ensuring that everybody's all learning no matter where you are in whatever region or facility, you're getting effective learning that looks and feels like Advent Health regardless of where you are. On top of that, it's just making us more efficient. We're sharing ideas, templates, theories, tools, all kinds of stuff. Um, we're not bogging down AIT when we see a new shiny object tool that we want, because we can all collectively talk about it and then very much go after as a whole, like after a specific tool that will work for all of us. So it's been rewarding a lot, and it's really a great thing, and we're so excited, and more to come. And that's just a great example of one of our communities as we move to a dynamic learning community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Part of that 2030 vision. We've been able to highlight a lot of aspects of that through this podcast. So it's great to have that point highlighted too. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to kind of cover a little bit of the type of person that could easily transition, and nothing's easy, but it
Sure.
would be, smooth transition into the work that you're doing.
Right.
So that listener that is either entry level, or even like you stated, someone internally that says, wow, that work actually sounds amazing.
Yes.
What type of person would that be? Maybe what department would that transition be best from?
Yeah, I'm not going to put it down to one department. In fact, I will say this: you're what you just said about being amazing. You're absolutely right. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We have the coolest job
Right,
in
right,
Advent
right.
Health, and I will go head to head with anybody and prove that our
Right.
job is by far the funnest, and we get to do so many amazing things. So I would say that it doesn't matter what department you're in. It doesn't matter really necessarily your background. There are areas that definitely transition into our space better than others. Transitioning teachers is a big one. A lot of K-12 or higher ed teachers do want to transition to our space, and there's a lot of resources online that do offer people to ramp up when it comes to that. But just beyond all of that, I mean, you've just got to have passion. You've got to have passion for learning. That's a prerequisite no matter what, because you can't be successful in this space by being a check the box type of person. Like, we are not licking envelopes. We're not operational. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into a project, and you push the baby bird out of the nest,
Right.
and you're on to the next one. It's a completely different project. And so you have got to be passionate, and you can't just approach every project the same way. So you need somebody who's creative. You need somebody who does have a level of technology curiosity,
Okay.
that really you don't have to know the tools, but you have to have already lived in some sort of a tool. And then, like, whether it's a video, right, like, hey, I love Photoshop, I love video, I love doing video editing, I love PowerPoint, and then you can translate those skills. Somebody who's not comfortable in that space probably wouldn't be a great fit. But also, like I said, somebody who's just kind of a nerd for learning
Yeah.
and curious and always willing to learn, because things change.
Right.
uh, I would say like yearly, monthly, weekly,
Of
daily.
course, of
Yeah,
course.
new things come out, and we're having to adapt. And if you can't sit in a space for a long period of time, I've never once seen a very successful instructional designer developer who has not professionally developed themselves and just sat and pumped out learning,
Right.
because you can't be successful like that.
Yeah. And where are you getting? I know you mentioned kind of how you do your continued learning or competency training. If you can maybe mention a couple of those resources, whether it be like a newsletter that
Yeah.
you track, or podcast, maybe for some of the listeners that may want to kind of expand their learning.
Oh, absolutely. I think the one of my favorite places is the Learning Guild. They've got a lot of great resources there. I mean, you can actually look. There's some people on LinkedIn that you can follow, that you're able to get some great information from. I would actually recommend it if you're that serious and you're like, I really want to understand learning. You can always start with The Science of E-Learning. It's a book by Clark and Meyer, and it is the fundamental book for the science of evidence-based best practice in e-learning. It's not the most exciting read, but it is pretty. I mean, but if you can read that and really understand what makes online learning effective, what's the science behind it, what are the principles, the coherence principle, the personalization principle, and really get that foundational knowledge, and then move towards the YouTube videos and LinkedIn, really talking about the tools and the development tools. You will be successful. But even more so than that, I would say find a mentor. Reach out in the spaces, join instructional designer groups on Facebook, LinkedIn. Reach out to me personally and have a conversation and get somebody who can talk to you and steer you, because there's a lot of different facets of this work as well. It's not all heads down developing. It's becoming more like that now, just based on the ease and the lower learning curve of the course authoring software. They're making it easier to use. So they're no longer hiring, when I say they, I mean the industry
Right.
really, and Advent Health. I think you don't have as many standalone instructional designers and then web-based training developers. It's more of a unicorn. So you need to be able to do both, but you can be put in a position to be successful doing that by just networking and talking to people.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. And Nick, obviously, your passion and your excitement is has just been so evident in this conversation. So we appreciate you sharing that with us. And if you can, just share any final piece of advice or wisdom throughout your career that you would like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I would say, I guess the advice I would give would be, don't, set a path, but don't be afraid to veer off of it. Let let your leaders guide you, let those around you guide you, and don't be afraid to take a chance. That's what got me put where I had a very clear path of what I wanted to do, but I trusted my leadership and I followed their path, and it has led to a lot of success and honestly a lot of I have a lot of love and passion for what I do every day, and I get to work with the most amazing people. So yeah, stay on your path, but don't be afraid to veer off it.
I love that. Yeah, yeah. It's obviously
Absolutely.
proven to be so successful for you. So
Sure.
thank you, Nick.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening to the Whole Career Podcast. We hope that you subscribe and listen to us on your favorite podcast channel. And until next time, take care.